Welcome to the Michael Rivero What Really Happened radio program.
Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, February 18th, 2021. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. And just minutes ago, before we went to air, the Perseverance rover successfully landed on the planet Mars. They're starting to get the first of the images. During the landing, Perseverance was relaying data to the Mars Climate Observer, which has recorded it and will send it off to Earth a little bit later. So the data is starting to pour on in, and congratulations to everybody at NASA JPL. And a job well done. And I know a lot of us are very excited about this mission being specifically tasked with looking for evidence of life. Ancient life, unfortunately, they're not out there trying to catch a Martian rabbit hopping past the camera, but they are going to be looking for more indications that Mars at one point was actually a quite life-filled world. And so we went through that 7 minutes of terror. And oddly enough, only CNN seemed to want to cover it on the corporate media, so I was watching it on NASA TV. Today is also Joe Stack Day, and Joe Stack gained notoriety, if you will, by flying his private plane into the offices of the Internal Revenue Service in Austin, Texas, some years ago, following a multi-year battle over taxes he didn't think he owed, resulting in the IRS going after his home and his business. And of course, the corporate media demonized him, said, oh, he's a kook, he was a crazy, he hated the government. But it later came on out that in point of fact, the IRS had actually made a mistake and refused to back off of it. Stack knew that he was right, and it just reached the point where finally he didn't feel he had any other options because they'd just taken his life away from him, his house, his business, and so forth. So it was a real tragedy, and so as a result, at least on the online community, the Joe Stack Day is remembered. Okay, turning to the weather, Storm Uri, that's the one that went through before Viola, broke the record for blanketing 73% of the United States in snow, the continental U.S. Blackouts were hitting from Minnesota to Texas. All 48 states were hit with snow. 23 people were killed. Actually, it's up to 30 now. That just came through. And of course, then Viola came on in and basically added to the misery down there. And it is miserable down there. There's predicting that by the time the storm gets out of there, New York City will get up to 10 inches of snow today. We had snow earlier this morning. We got about 4 inches, and the weather guessers are saying we're not going to get any more snow here until a week from tomorrow. So we're going to have a little bit of a respite, a little bit of a warming spell, and some of the snow will melt away and we can get on out and drive our cars. If there was any place to go, what with all the COVID-19 lockdowns. Story coming on out of Russia today. It's so cold. How cold is it? Apparently, it was confusing the weather satellites. Now, the GOES East satellite, which uses infrared sensors to measure cloud cover and plot the structure of clouds above the continental U.S., was fooled by the sudden cold snap and began mistaking the ground for cloud cover. And that caused a lot of the weather guessers to miss their guesses, which is not all that uncommon here. Apparently, Texas generating capacity has been decreased by a whole third. And it was knocked out. They're now saying the problem was shoddy winter infrastructure. They're calling it the Wild West approach to regulating the independent grid, and it left millions of people in the cold. Now, part of the problem was the federal government came down with a bunch of subsidies and basically pushed Texas into this green renewable energy experiment with these wind turbines and solar panels. And they really did not consider the possibility of serious adverse weather. And so these wind turbines in Texas began freezing up. Now, it is possible to make them winter-proof. In fact, Sweden basically called up Texas and said it really is easy. You just have to add a layer of carbon fiber to those turbine wings, which can be remotely heated to melt the ice. And somebody sent me a photo of wind turbines that are operating down in Antarctica. And obviously they're able to deal with the cold, but somebody somewhere in setting up the Texas wind turbines, just really, they weren't thinking ahead to a worst case scenario. So we have this other story. This is coming out of Zero Hedge. Is Texas facing a humanitarian crisis? And yes, it may well be. Up to 15 million Texans remain without heat and electricity. Another round of winter weather is battering parts of the state. You know, some people in Texas have been without electricity since Sunday, and they're scrambling to find shelters. There are all these weather-related deaths. We talked yesterday, I think it was, about this mother and her child were in their car trying to stay warm, and they succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning, and it's just really ugly down there. They've got the boil water alerts out, but people don't have the energy to boil the water, so they're going to the stores for bottled water. The stores have run out of that, and that is Texas' experiment with the Green New Deal. It really did not work. Now, earlier in the week, when Texas began to get into trouble from all of this, and they were asking for help, the liberals out there were screaming about, ha, 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 poor Texas, they're talking secession, and now they need our help. But the Texans are understanding the reason they're in this mess right now is because of federal government overreach in, you know, getting them to get rid of coal and oil-fired power plants in favor of these windmills and solar panels. And if anything, this disaster with the storms is actually motivating Texans even more to secede from the United States. So it's going the opposite direction from what a lot of people were sort of assuming that it would. And the Texas power crisis has put renewed focus on Biden's cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline. Because if your windmills fail and your solar panels are covered in snow, what do you fall back on? Well, you fall back on the fossil fuels unless the supply of fossil fuels has been, in fact, cut off. And so Biden is probably going to suffer a little political damage from that decision as well. And he already has. I mean, all the people who are working on the Keystone XL, they're out of work. The companies that were supplying parts and equipment and services to the pipeline, they're out of work. And so a lot of people are wondering, you know, why was that done? And the prevailing theory is that Biden killed the Keystone pipeline in order to force the transport of oil and gas by rail for one of his major campaign donors who just happens to own those tracks. Story out of appnews.com. I'm sorry, AP News, my mistake. The power outages continue to linger. Millions of Americans have had another day without electricity or heat in the aftermath of the winter storms. And the storm that just went through, Ebola, complicated recovery efforts, especially in states that are unaccustomed to such weather, which would be parts of Texas, Arkansas, and the lower Mississippi Valley. It normally doesn't get like this down there. Gosh darn, that human-caused global warming. And meanwhile, nearly 150,000 customers remained without power yesterday in and around Portland, Oregon, nearly a week after a massive snow and ice storm swept into the Pacific Northwest, taking out hundreds of miles of power lines as ice-laden trees collapsed. And the damage wrought by the storm to the power system was the worst in 40 years. More than 2,000 power lines, 208 miles in total, are down, and they're saying it is going to be a long time repairing that. 3 substations have been knocked offline, And they're basically saying Dale Goodman, Director of Utility Operations for PG&E, was saying these are the most dangerous conditions we have ever seen in the history of PG&E. So it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. Another complication, though, is that the winter weather, the unseasonable winter weather, especially if you ask Al Gore, their vaccine providers are now concerned there may be shipping delays. And this is complicated by the fact that both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines need to be kept really cold. Unfortunately, you can't just open the back of the truck and let the winter weather, that's not cold enough. And those refrigeration units do eventually run out of fuel. We talked about the carbon monoxide related incident. Apparently one driver hit a snowplow. So there are a lot of deaths out there. As I mentioned before, 73% of the United States of the continental United States is covered in snow. This is the most widespread coverage in 17 years. And this is something to keep in mind when those global warming people show up and say, oh, we've got to control carbon and get rid of oil and gas and the world will be beautiful. No, the world has kind of taught us a hard lesson about what happens when you refuse to diversify your energy resources. Getting into the political news now, over in Africa, they're dealing with terrorism, famine, disease, including Ebola right now. But Biden's top priority for Africa is for them to focus on being socially woke. Back on February 2nd, President Biden announced to African leaders in a virtual summit conference on Zoom that the United States was promoting the rights of the LGBTQI individuals. And Biden stressed to the African Union that diplomacy would stress multilateral accords, shared concerns in democracy, health security against COVID-19, and helping nations adjust to climate influences. Well, you're not doing a very good job down in Texas. Story coming out of the Gateway Pundit. Representative Ilhan Omar was recently appointed as the vice chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And Jewish Americans are calling out this appointment because of her purported anti-Semitism, forgetting that Ilhan Omar herself is a Semite. So these 1,500 Orthodox rabbis called on Congress to rescind that appointment. Over at the GOP, they have issued a report calling out the weaknesses of the Biden administration's policy toward communist China this week. And they focused on Secretary of State Blinken, who apparently founded a firm that received Chinese money for DOD research-linked universities. So they issued a 6-page memo suggesting the link between the Chinese Communist Party and Secretary of State Antony Blinken may prompt a conflict of interest when it comes to confronting China. And yes, obviously, it definitely would. All right, following this last year of riots by Antifa and Black Lives Matter, Congress is finally starting to talk about reparations for slavery. And the Democrats are pushing for a bill to consider a national apology. And I am absolutely opposed to this, first and foremost, because not every state in the United States was a slave state. A lot of states banned slavery. They were free states. New Hampshire was one of them. I don't think states like New Hampshire should be forced to apologize to anyone for anything, let alone pony up some money for something that was done to people no longer alive, done to them by people no longer alive. And the illustration I like to use about this, my family on my mother's side ran a station on the Underground Railroad helping escaped slaves get to Canada. and the house is still standing. It's unfortunately in terrible disrepair right now, but the hidden slave cellar in the basement is still there. Wish somebody would declare it a historical monument. Now, can you imagine if I went up to Canada and knocked on the doors of those black families descended from the slaves that my ancestors helped to freedom and demanded some kind of payment? I would be laughed off the porch, and justifiably so. Okay, I wasn't there. I probably would have helped my family, help the escaped slaves get to Canada, but I wasn't there, and so I didn't. And so I can't take credit for that, just as we cannot assign blame for the sin of slavery to people who were not there at the time that sin was being committed. It's just another way of pouring money onto the black population in exchange for votes. No wonder the Democrats are pushing this. And somebody really ought to take time to educate the black population into the Democratic Party's role in the slavery issue. Because certainly when the 13th Amendment came up for a vote, the Republicans were all for it, and the Democrats were staunchly opposed. In fact, there's a movie. It's on the various cable services right now. It's about Lincoln. It's directed by Steven Spielberg. I don't know why it has not gotten a lot of press. It's a very well-done movie. They overemphasize his concern for the slavery issue. We know that preserving the Union was his real agenda, but it's a well-made movie. Daniel Day-Lewis is playing Lincoln. It's got a stellar cast, and if you just happen to see it there as you go around your dial, you might want to tune on in. It's a good movie. I really enjoyed it. All right, getting on to the issue of election fraud, which is not going to go away because we in the independent media are not going to let it go away. It turns out the United States is not the only Western nation that has problems with electronic voting. Imagine my shock on that one. In this last election, several states witnessed abnormalities, vote switching, and inaccurate vote totals in the thousand. Over in the United Kingdom, they've had issues with voting machines, and Ireland and the Netherlands banned voting machines 10 years ago. Will not allow those to be used. So good for them. We need to do the same thing here. No electronic voting machines. Story coming on out of the Gateway Pundit, and they're basically expressing shock because the Republican Party leadership, after abandoning Donald Trump, they basically turned their backs on him, and they stood silent while this landslide election for Trump was blatantly stolen by Biden. Now, all of a sudden, Republican leaders are making a big show of looking into election integrity, and it's just hypocritical, and it's junk. It really, really is. Now, President Trump had a Newsmax interview with Greg Kelly. This was right after the death of Rush Limbaugh, and in between the plaudits for Rush Limbaugh, former President Trump. Now, he's still President Trump in my mind. Anyway, he told Greg Kelly, that Rush Limbaugh thought that Trump had won the election. We did win the election. It was disgraceful what happened, and we have to get to the bottom of what happened. I absolutely, wholeheartedly agree. We cannot allow this to stand, or we have lost our republic. Trump is considering starting his own social media platform. He has described Twitter as boring. And he says, we don't want to go back, even if Twitter were to reconsider its lifetime ban on Donald Trump. And certainly if Trump starts a social media platform, I'll certainly sign up for it. Meanwhile, Facebook is in a standoff, or they're going head-to-head with Australia. Oh, we got to take a commercial. We'll be right back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, and a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network does need your continued support to keep on doing what we're doing. And right now, it is especially critical because Republic Broadcasting Network is operating out of Texas, and they still have their electricity, but they're going to be paying through the nose. I mean, the electric prices in Texas are going right through the roof because of the windmill and solar panel situation. And this next bill is going to be a real shock, and we're going to need your help to keep the lights turned on down there in Round Rock, Texas. So once again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. And if you mail in a donation of $100 or more, include your t-shirt size and a mailing address, and you will receive one of these spiffy, one-of-a-kind, nobody else can have them, RBN t-shirts and the associated bragging rights that go with that. And don't forget, the front side deal is back as well. So it's a good time to be getting involved with supporting RBN. Okay, now we're talking about Facebook versus Australia. Best 3 falls out of 5, I guess. And somebody, I guess, it needs to lock them into a steel cage, steel cage death match. Anyway, Facebook is now blocking all news sharing across Australia. If you try and post anything from Australian media, you will get a little warning flag that says, you can't do that. So it's starting to escalate here. And now, Facebook is blocking all the news sharing across the continent. What Australia wants is for Facebook to pay for materials they get from Australian news media, and Facebook, which is a very wealthy corporation, is refusing to do that. Meanwhile, the Australian government is slamming Facebook, accusing them of double standards for having created the perfect platform for pedophiles to share child abuse while blocking Australians from reading the news. And they do have a valid point there. This is kind of interesting. Over in Palm Beach, there's this woman, Angelique Contreras. She's a mother of 3, and she put a comment on her Facebook account about dumping thousands of masks on the lawn of the county commissioner. This resulted in a visit from the sheriff's office, basically said that this was considered a threat against a county official. And she, in turn, had been responding to another man named Anthony Collins, who was joking about leaving hundreds of bags of garbage on the lawn of the county commissioner. Now, my question immediately is, don't the sheriffs have more pressing matters to take care of, like, rape, robbery, and murder, and things like that? So, story coming on out of the Irish Times, Breda O'Brien, or O'Brien, I think it is, says it's time to question the tech billionaire overlords. And just basically commenting on we're going through this cultural change with immense implications in that, starting with the advent of the internet, all of a sudden peer-to-peer communication was all over the globe and people were communicating with each other directly. And now we've gone into this huge enforced reversal of having everything that we see, hear, and read pass through government-aligned filters. Through these various tech social media companies who are so far immune from lawsuits under the theory that they don't have to obey the First Amendment because they're private entities and not the government itself. Although there have been legal cases before which said that, yes, private companies do have to conform to the First Amendment. Another story, this one coming out of Strategic Culture, and it's warning people who engage in conspiracy theorizing that it could get you labeled as a domestic terrorist. Now, people are always discussing conspiracies. They always have throughout history. There was a conspiracy theory about how George V died, conspiracy theory about how Catherine the Great died, certainly a lot of theories about how John F. Kennedy died, and so forth. But apparently now the government is considering defining anybody who engages in conspiracy theories as a domestic terrorist. Now, that is really a bit of a reach, because somebody who is researching, for example, the Vince Foster suicide, we're not violent people. Got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and I'm still peeking in through NASA TV, and the Perseverance rover is currently downloading a lot of technical data. It's basically checking itself out. It sent a couple of quick pictures, and then it started doing all kinds of internal tests to make sure everything survived the landing, and that's a normal procedure to do. We did the same thing on Viking. So we're kind of waiting for the data dump from the the Climate Observer to start getting some of the more interesting videos. All righty, so getting on back to the news here. This one, I don't know, as somebody who grew up during the Cold War, I can't tell you the irony of this story. The Russian Foreign Ministry has issued a statement lambasting the United States government under Joe Biden for the ongoing persecution campaign taking place against anybody at all who does not agree with the results of the latest presidential election. And, you know, for Russia to be lecturing the United States, talk about a reversal. And of course, they're absolutely right. They are absolutely right here. All right, let's talk about COVID-19. It's still out there. It's still causing a lot of problems for people here. The CDC is going to invest almost $200 million to help better identify and track coronavirus variants as cases of the so-called super COVID continue to sweep across the U.S., while laboratories are testing fewer than 0.6% of their samples for mutations. So they really don't have a good handle on this at all here. Over in Europe, people who work for the international institutions based in Brussels, such as the European Commission and NATO, will be vaccinated against coronavirus in separate vaccination centers, not the ones used for the rest of the city. A little elitism on display there. The FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn are now investigating New York Governor Andrew Cuomo over a mounting potential scandal that his administration intentionally covered up coronavirus-related deaths in nursing homes. This came out yesterday, and there are already calls for his resignation or impeachment over this scandal. And Cuomo's top aide privately apologized to Democratic lawmakers for withholding the state's nursing home death toll, saying that they froze out of fear the true numbers would be used against them by federal prosecutors. Well, it looks like it's going to happen anyway. Democratic leaders in the New York State Senate are now moving, or actually they moved yesterday, to strip Governor Andrew Cuomo of his emergency pandemic powers. And this comes after the news broke about the FBI investigation. Donald Trump is speculating that Joe Biden is either lying or mentally gone after the president on Tuesday night said that his administration arrived to find no COVID-19 vaccines available. I seem to recall Joe Biden getting a shot, not too long ago, and complaining that his arm hurt from it. So let's see, lying, mentally gone, lying, mentally gone, lying, mentally gone. I'm going to go with the mentally gone. Over in Spain, we talked about this before, where 46 nursing home residents died after the first shot of the Pfizer mRNA vaccine. And now The second Pfizer shots are now on hold until they can figure out exactly what happened over there. I'm going to go out on a limb here and speculate. We know the intense cold that these vaccines have to be kept at. We also know that RNA is an inherently unstable molecule. I'm thinking somewhere on the delivery chain, if you will, that they were allowed to warm up just a little. And of course, by warm up, we're talking still, way, way, way below zero, but not at the cold temperature that they're supposed to be. Bill Gates is now out there claiming that there may have to be a third shot to combat the variations in COVID-19. He did this on an interview on CBS News. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Is asking why we haven't focused on non-vaccine strategies, including therapeutic drugs like hydroxychloroquine. Over in Great Britain, the government there is going to ask parents to test their kids twice a week for COVID at home. Hassle the kids there here. This is kind of an interesting little story. It came out of Russia today. Apparently, the Vatican has effectively made COVID-19 vaccination mandatory for all employees, warning those who decline to receive the shot that they could be let go. And I'm scratching my head because Vatican City, don't you think they would have an inside track with the boss to keep themselves disease-free? Oh, ye of little faith. My goodness, my goodness. Over in France, a French pharmaceutical company has developed a nasal spray that it says could eliminate up to 99% of the COVID-19 virus. The product will be available to buy within weeks. This is coming from the French group Pharma and Beauty. It's been working on the spray for almost a year. They've had several studies showing it can eliminate 99% of the viral load in nasal passages within 30 seconds and reduce the spread of the virus by up to 90%. And production is scheduled to begin next week. Each bottle of 30 milliliters is expected to last 1 month, and they will be sold for just under 15 euros each. White House coronavirus advisor Andy Slavitt appeared stumped when asked to explain why California and Florida, which had very different methods of combating COVID-19, have similar trends when it comes to the virus. Now, California, of course, is closed up tight with masks and social distancing, and hair salons shut down unless you're Nancy Pelosi. And Florida is the opposite. They're open, but they're both showing exactly the same behavior of the virus and cases and infections, which obviously implies that the lockdowns and masks really don't contribute much of anything at all, unless you own stock in the face mask company. Now, Johnson & Johnson, a lot of people are looking at their vaccine because unlike the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, which are these mRNA vaccines, Johnson & Johnson's vaccine uses a more stable DNA molecule, but they only have a few million doses of their vaccine ready to ship, despite the promise of 100 million shots by the end of June. And apparently authorization is likely just weeks away. So we'll see what happens with them. Interestingly enough, in Virginia, they're now paying monitors to sit in the classrooms while the teachers teach from home. So just sort of imagine your kids are going to school, they're riding on the school bus, unless you drop them off. They're sitting in the classroom, but the teacher is teaching from home. And in order to keep the kids focused and paying attention, they're paying these classroom monitors who are not teachers to sit in the classroom and sort of keep them well behaved. All right. Story that came on out of StephenLendman.org. He writes a lot of really good things. And his take right now is that under the banner of defeating COVID-19, that a lot of freedoms that we take for granted are beginning to vanish. And he says the self-styled land of the free and the home of the brave now exists only in Hollywood films, television productions, mind-manipulating classrooms, and big media propaganda reports. But he's saying the reality is, in fact, quite different. We already know that. We've been seeing it happen in front of us. In other illnesses here, the World Health Organization is responding to the outbreak of Ebola in Guinea, which has got its first confirmed Ebola death since 2016. And World Health Organization has come out with a declaration of an epidemic situation. And they've issued the alert to 6 African nations that they feel are at risk from the outbreak in Guinea. They're not identifying the countries that received the warning, and so far they are not identifying which strain of Ebola is involved, because people hear Ebola and they go, oh, horror, horror, you know, the Outbreak movie with, you know, Dustin Hoffman and so forth. The reality is Ebola exists in several strains. Some of the real bad ones, Ebola Mayinga, that's a slate wiper, better than 95% mortality. And then all the way down to Ebola Reston. A lot of people aren't aware there was an Ebola outbreak in Reston, Virginia at an animal warehouse handling facility, if you will. That one turned monkeys into goo, but never affected humans at all. So there's a wide spectrum of Ebola out there, and I don't think we need to start screaming yet. There haven't been that many deaths in Guinea. If it was the Mayinga strain, it would really be a panic. All right, so let's talk about some of the international news now. And people are starting to worry about the future of the European Union. They're starting to wonder if maybe the word union is perhaps not viable anymore, because we're seeing an Italexit movement, a Frexit movement, a Swexit movement, and a Nexit movement start to take root in the various countries. And they're looking at Britain in the wake of Brexit. They've seen all the punishment the EU tried to dump on them, and Britain stood firm. They're going back to being their own little country, and things are going to get back to a little bit more British, as it were. Meanwhile, over in Italy, Prime Minister Mario Draghi is talking about the new Italian government and announcing it will be pro-European and Atlanticist in its foreign policy. In other words, staying a member of NATO and willing to carry on with that alliance. All righty, over the Black Sea, 2 Sukhoi 27 interceptor planes escorted 2 French fighters and a tanker aircraft away from Russian airspace. This is coming from the Russian military. A video of the encounter in the sky appeared on social media. So the Southern Military District deployed the interceptors yesterday as the trio of foreign aircraft appeared on radars. Everybody's testing everybody else's borders. I'm watching the feed from NASA TV, by the way, to keep up on Perseverance, and they're showing a video now. Did you know there's actually a little tiny helicopter or drone on this craft that can take off and take an aerial view of something? That's very, very cool. That is so cool. I'm just excited to see what we're going to get from this particular piece of hardware. Russia is developing the Hmyman Air Base in the Syrian coast so that it can handle Russian strategic nuclear bombers. This was reported on the 9th in the Russian Gazeta, and I'm not going to try and pronounce that other name. But apparently Russia is going to extend the runway to receive the long-range strategic aircraft capable of carrying nuclear weapons. everybody's posturing here. Article coming on out of Zero Hedge. Myanmar protesters denounce China's hidden hand in propping up the junta. And the article is all about increasing suspicion that China had a hidden hand in the military taking over the government following the fraudulent election in that country. And it's interesting that we're starting to see, I dismiss this as propaganda. And the blaming of China and the inavailability of any actual evidence about that is reinforcing the theory that the opposition to the military coup is a U.S.-backed color revolution. Because we know that when people who are stealing elections don't succeed in stealing elections, things can get very ugly. Just think back to the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. Meanwhile, the European Union is giving Israel $15 million in what is termed as creative aid for their war industry. And it's not exactly sure what they're going to do with it. And we may never know what they're doing with it. All right, let's talk about the economic news. We had mentioned before that down in Long Beach, California, Kroger's had closed 2 of the stores they owned over a mandate for what is called hazard pay. And now they have announced the closure of 2 more stores, this in Seattle, Washington. This after the city passed a $4 an hour hazard pay mandate for grocery workers. And the theory behind that is that grocery stores, the employees there are more likely to be exposed to COVID-19 than people who are staying at home. Kroger's position is we're operating on a razor-thin profit margin anyway, and so we're going to close the store. So there's a little bit of a kerfuffle kicking up there. The ice storm, snowstorms down in Texas is having a real impact on the global oil market. Right now, 40% of U.S. crude production is offline. And that is going to cause gasoline prices to go right through the roof. And, you know, some aspect here that they're not talking about, they're talking about all the people who are dying in these storms. What they're not mentioning are the livestock, the cattle, the chickens that are freezing to death right now. So there's going to be shortages of these items in the near future. If you have a chest freezer, it's time to go down to your big box store and stock up on beef and chicken. So we're going to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, and we're talking about the economic news. And liberals are very upset at Joe Biden. They're accusing him of being a racist because he is refusing to forgive up to $50,000 of student debt. I don't understand how race even gets into that. But on his little town hall on Tuesday evening, a young woman asked him when he would forgive more than the $10,000 he'd previously suggested. And Biden said, I will not make that happen. He is now basically saying that he does not have the power and authority to do that. I'm not even sure. Let's see. And I think the racism comes on in because he says he doesn't feel he needs to forgive the debt for people who went to Harvard and Yale and Penn. And maybe you don't, but that's not really based on race. It's based on economic circumstances. I have a feeling it's not going to happen. I am in favor of forgiving that student debt. Actually, I'm in favor of forgiving all the debt. Let's have a grand jubilee and a reset here and go on back to, a value-based currency and, banking as it was prior to the First Bank of the United States. The reason I'm very sensitive to this issue of the student loans is having watched education deteriorate. I have seen where having a college degree has gone from being a guarantor of a higher paying job to merely being a fashion accessory, especially if you look at some of the things degrees are being handed out for these days. And the sources of financial aid have dried up. The cost of college has skyrocketed out of sync with the rate of inflation. And these kids got suckered in. They were all told, if you go to college and get this degree, there'll be a high-paying job waiting for you on the other side. And you'll be able to pay off this student loan in no time at all. And, of course, it didn't happen. They got conned. They went to school. They went to college. They didn't get educated. They got indoctrinated. They've graduated with their degree, which they can wave around, and a lot of them are working as cooks in fast food restaurants. It's that bad out there. So, yes, I think the student loan debt ought to be forgiven because these kids were taken advantage of, and, you know, having to carry that debt, especially at a time when they can't really earn that much money, it's going to cripple their path into the future. And that means it's crippling the entire nation's future. So you think about that one for a little while. Meanwhile, China is reportedly looking into limiting the export of rare earth minerals to the United States, which will probably cause more headaches between the two countries. China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology in January proposed draft controls on the production. Oh my goodness, how time flies when you're doing the news. All right, we're going to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2, and we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines, area code 512-248-8252, and I'm going to finish this other story from the economy talking points here. China is looking to limit exports of the rare earth minerals to the United States. Now, these are very specific minerals used in high-tech manufacturing. China has a lot of them. The U.S. has some rare earth minerals within its borders, but not enough to meet the demand. And I mean, things like the F-35 fighter jets rely on them. Your smartphone relies on them. If China were to cut that off completely, I mean, we'd really be in a world of hurt here. Okay, now let's see. This story really kind of bothered me. This happened in Portland, Oregon. And there was this supermarket called Fred Meyer Supermarket, and because of the storms delaying everything and whatnot, thousands of items inside the supermarket went past their expiration date. Now, the expiration date isn't when the food goes bad, it's when it doesn't taste as good as they think it should. And a lot of times food manufacturers have been accused of sort of shortening those expiration dates to try and stimulate more purchases. But this market threw out thousands of these perishable items after suffering a power loss due to the winter storm. Now, images of the food spread on social media. Working poor folks basically came on up and stormed the dumpster. A lot of homeless people showed up. And at that point, a store manager called the police, which blocked hungry people from taking the free food. And this is America in 2021. I am absolutely appalled. First of all, we've got better uses for our police. And second, America wastes so much food. What's wrong with trying to connect the food that nobody wants to buy with the people who are going hungry in our country, of which there are many? Let's not kid ourselves. There are a lot of hungry people out, a lot of hungry children out there. And we have to cut them some slack. I know there are some food rescue programs out there that are trying to deal with that, but the supermarkets, by and large, have an attitude that they would rather destroy the food that is going into the trash bin so that people don't take it instead of going into the store and, you know, spending money to buy it. But the people who are dumpster diving, they don't have the money to begin with. And I'm just appalled. I really, really am. All right, we've got callers starting to call on in. Let's go to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark, are you there?
What's going on? Are you there? Are you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, good. What's going on in Texas right now is really a disgrace. I mean, we've got to, Biden's got to go. I mean, if the military really wanted to protect us against enemies, foreign to domestic, they'd remove this clown right now. Okay, this guy is a menace to this country. He's totally at the best, he's totally incompetent. At the worst, he's an out-and-out traitor. And I don't believe Harris is any better. He's allowing stuff like this to happen, and it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get better. We don't have global warming coming to this country or to the world. Like, I believe we got another ice age, very possibly in a way.
I would agree. The grand solar minimum.
I was listening to somebody. I'm not sure who it was. Maybe it was even you. So something about the magnetic pulse or something of that. The way it's working is actually pulling the weather colder, further and further south. Okay, and it's a good possibility. And a lot of people aren't ready for this. A lot of areas aren't ready for this. And with the lack of energy we're going to have, lack of natural gas, and relying on these stupid windmills, that's not going to cut it, Mike. It's not going to cut it at all. You need lots of energy. You need lots of oil. You need lots of natural gas. You need the ability to bring this to people. You need to have the pipelines to bring them and other means of production. And you need to really dig and get these things. You need to open new wells and use wells that are not in production now. And this trader is not going to allow this, obviously. Okay, he's an imposter. I should really call him an imposter.
Yes, it's fraudulency.
Yeah, and I just want to, just answer something, real quick about what somebody said yesterday when we were talking about eugenics. Okay.
Yes.
Eugenics is not who you're going to marry or what or why you're going to marry somebody. You can marry somebody in a free country. You can marry who you want. Okay. If you want to marry somebody from your own race, no problem. If you want to marry somebody from another race, no problem. If your kids are of one race in specific, no problem. If your kids are of mixed race, no problem. They're Americans. That's what counts. And as long as we go by the Constitution, that's what counts. What's eugenics is when you tell people, no, you cannot marry such and such of such and such race or ethnic group or whatever else, or when you have forced abortions on people, or when you say people are useless eaters and need to be either sterilized or killed, that's eugenics. All right? This is the kind of stuff that, what's her name again?
Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger. That she wanted. This is what the Rockefellers want. This is what somebody like Bill Gates wants to just about kill everybody off, I think. Okay? That's eugenics. It's not eugenics, okay? Or if you want to, or, just, apartheid, that's eugenics, okay? Government-sponsored apartheid, obviously.
Yes.
Or if you want to commit genocide against certain people, that's eugenics, okay? It's not if somebody wants to, you fine, dandy. You let's say you're attracted to a beautiful woman, you get married, fine. I had 3 marriages, okay? And actually, it went gauntlet. My first wife actually was black. My second was actually from Germany. So, I mean, and my third wife is from the South, from the deep South, okay? So, I mean, I've run the gamble. That's because that, to me, was what I wanted to do. Now, unfortunately, I'm not the easiest guy to get along with, so I guess that's why I wound up in 3 marriages, all fairly unsuccessful, other than having kids, which I'm very happy about, and doing quite a lot better than I've ever done, okay, at least financially. But that's besides the point. That's your choice, who you want to marry, why you want to marry somebody, and if the racial makeup stays predominantly white, fine. If it doesn't, fine also, as long as we stick by the Constitution. My own belief is as time goes on, we're probably going to look very similar to, for instance, a lot of countries in Latin America. We're going to be a mix. We're going to be basically mixed.
Yes.
Probably some kind of brown, light brown skin, dark brown. It's hard to say. You know what I mean? But it's not going to, as long as we stick with that Constitution, that's what counts. I'm not loyal to a race, Mike. I'm loyal to my country. And I'm seeing my country being destroyed. That's what bothers me, okay? I'm seeing it destroyed by enemies within, all right? And that's what bothers me, okay? Not what race we are or even a race or something, because I would gladly have a president, Colonel West. You know who Colonel West is, right? He's head of the Republican Party now in Texas, the former lieutenant colonel in the Army.
Yes.
I would gladly have him as president, no problem, okay? Or I would gladly have, let's see, DeSantis as president, or Kristi Noem, okay?
Okay.
So it doesn't bother me the races of people. It bothers me whether you're going to follow the Constitution, which, by the way, is the only thing that really makes this country exceptional. When they say exceptional, it doesn't mean going around conquering other people and telling other countries what to do. It means our Constitution. I think the Constitution is exceptional. I don't think there's a Constitution like it anywhere in the world.
Well, actually, there is a lot of countries that were formed after the United States used the Constitution as their model. I think Liberia, it's an almost identical copy.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, evidently they don't obey their Constitution very well.
Neither does our government.
Yeah, well, now it's not, yeah.
Well, everybody talks about the Magna Carta and what a magnificent document it was, but, neither side complied with it. They all signed it and said, huzzah, huzzah. Then they went back to their normal looting and plundering ways.
But I don't think the Magna Carta was as good as the Constitution. The Constitution is it's not perfect when it was put together, but they had the ability. The founding fathers made sure that you had the ability to amend the Constitution, and that's so important.
Yes.
And that's how we got rid of slavery. We amended the Constitution. That's how we, established. And one of the problems why we're in such bad shape right now is it was never meant for the legislature to change the Constitution anyways, like the Second Amendment. The only way the Second Amendment should be changed is through a constitutional amendment. I think it has to be 2/3 of the states vote on. The same thing with the First Amendment, when you limit free speech. The only way that can be done should be with the constitutional amendment. It shouldn't be done anyway, but that's besides the point. And that's what people seem to understand. As far as Liberia goes, unfortunately, it never really had. I had, when I worked at the prison system in Texas, there were a number of Liberians working there. That's such a lot of people just can't do that job. They just don't want the job. So they were getting people just coming into this country, legal immigrants, and in Amarillo, where I lived, there were a lot of Liberians. A lot of them, when I worked at the prison, and I used to talk to some of them, about, back at home, and, it was a dictatorship. There's no question about it. But like I said, so a constitution is only good as the people who make sure that constitution stays in effect. And that's what, like you said, that's the problem today. We're not sticking by the Constitution.
No, we aren't. We certainly are, but unfortunately, we're not in charge here. By the way, I want to back up a little bit. I double-checked just to make sure I wasn't going to say something dumb. But for an amendment to be added to the Constitution, it takes a 2/3 vote of Congress, but 3/4 of the states must ratify.
Is that it? Okay, I didn't know that. I thought it was 2/3 of the states. So that's even better, because it shouldn't be done lightly. Okay, the last time I believe the Constitution actually was changed were the liquor laws. First to ban alcohol, and then they bring it back. Okay, and of course the IRS is a constitutional amendment. But since then, I mean,
we're not sure about that one.
Even in the Second Amendment. First time it was really violated, I think, was back in the 30s when they outlawed submachine guns. The only way that those submachine guns should have been outlawed was through a constitutional amendment. Then in '68, a felon couldn't own a gun or buy a gun. Now, you might think that's fine and dandy, but it's not, because that's not according to the Constitution. The only way that should have been done is by, again, having a constitutional amendment to say a felon can't own a firearm or can't buy a firearm. But that's basically it. So we got to stick by the Constitution. That's all. That's the main thing. And then we're going to remain a great country. It doesn't matter who's president, what the majority of the people are, or anything else like that. And we got to also value life. We got to make sure you don't just, oh, by the way, abortion is another form of eugenics. I forgot to mention.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that's right at the heart of Planned Parenthood. I mean, that was started and aimed primarily at the black community.
And again, I'm going to say it again. The woman was evil. And somebody else mentioned that Bill Gates is Jewish. No, he's not. He's about as waspish as you can get. As a matter of fact, he comes from the Rockefeller family. His family somehow connected to the Rockefeller family and to the people, either to that guy Watson and IBM. Okay, so just to establish that. All right. Well, that's about it, Mike. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Kelly in Austin. And Kelly, how you doing down there with all this snow and ice and power failures?
Hey there, a couple of things. Tell you today, I've been harvesting snow all day to convert that to water.
Okay.
Running it through a big Berkey filter and then transferring that over to carboys because our water system is shut down. And I'm not taking anything for granted. I want to make sure we have enough around here to do that. I'm an urban survivalist.
Yes.
And I did what I had to do in order to make sure that we have water around here to provide for my wife, myself. Our daughter and her husband are here, and I need to make sure that I have water for everybody here, and also water to be able to provide for my mother-in-law, who was a mile down the road. So what I know is that there are many thousands of people in this city who are in a world of hurt right now because they don't know what. They don't know what to do. They have no idea. We got 6 inches of snow on the ground around here in the city. And they're running down to the local grocery store, standing in line for 2 hours trying to buy cases of Evian water.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Good luck. Good luck. I know you. So you majored in social studies in college. All right. What I really want to tell you is I heard that you mentioned rare earths, China and rare earths. What you don't know, and what I know from firsthand, is that there is a major rare earth deposit in West Texas, right smack dab in the middle of my dissertation research area.
Okay.
I sampled many wells in that. It's in Hudspeth County, Texas, just outside of the little town of Sierra Blanca. It's under development by Texas Mineral Resources Corporation. And it contains many of the rare earths that are needed to sustain the high-tech industry right here.
Well, I'm glad to hear it because, I mean, the demand is very, very high when you consider how many smartphones and smartwatches and laptops and tablets and everything, TVs, and, it's like rare earth minerals were so freely available from China. Everybody developed technology based on them, and now that China's about to crank that valve shut, they're going to be scrambling to sort of re-engineer some of this stuff.
That's right. Now, if you're looking for an opportunity to invest in a mining operation in the United States that has real potential, that's it. The Texas Mineral Resources Corporation. I'm not recommending it. I'm just telling you that if you're if you're thinking about it,
it would be really good if I actually had money to invest in the company. Okay.
Yeah, it is a seriously significant rare earths deposit in this country. It is a volcanic complex out there, and again, I know it well. I've sampled hundreds of wells in that area over the years, and I know the chemistry of these things. And that company used my dissertation from way back in the last century as a basis for identifying water resources to support their processing operation. I know them very well. They're
good.
And that would be a serious competitor with any rare earth supplier from China. So don't think that China is the only supplier of rare earths. These minerals are worldwide, but the thing is, you have to look for them where they're concentrated. where the concentration is sufficient enough to make the mining
you're dealing with the unit cost of
there it is.
extraction. Yeah.
Absolutely, you're right. So, and I know an area. There's a magnificent old volcanic intrusions, and I wasn't thinking about the rare earth potential when I did my research in isotope hydrology out there years ago. But I talked with the people who are affiliated with that company, the geologists and engineers there. Hey, go after it, man, because if we have a source of rare earth in this country, we need to do what we can to make sure that China does not corner the market and make it so that we're at a disadvantage.
Well, that's definitely good advice.
All right, Mike. Yeah.
All right.
Well, thanks so much. I just wanted you to know that.
All right. Well, thank you very much here, Kelly. Thank you for the phone call. And we're coming up on yet another commercial break, so I'm going to hold off taking any more phone calls. And we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to take another phone call. We're going to go to Randy in Missouri. Hello, Randy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Well, you've been talking about eugenics and Bill Gates and Margaret Sanger a lot, so I thought I'd put my 2 cents worth in.
Okay.
There's, some of the calls were kind of extolling the positive virtues of eugenics in regards to preservation of races, and I just think that that's not really what Bill Gates is about. He's not just a eugenist. He doesn't just believe in eugenics. He's a transhumanist, and the dedication of a transhumanist, at least in Bill Gates' regards, is the elimination of the population of the planet, or the reduction of it down to practically zero. These are the same globalist folks that put up the Georgia Guidestones. So they have a template. They want to reduce the world's population. And, sure, there might be this aspect of crediting some of these people with the preservation of individual races as far as the theory of eugenics is concerned, but these are also the same people that are responsible for the balkanization of Western Europe and North America. Yes. I mean, these are the same folks. So, and this isn't just about eliminating people. I mean, you go back to Al Gore back in 2010 when he was touring the country and featuring his book, The Future, and he said it just, hey, we're going to re-engineer the planet, all nature and all life. Okay. What does that mean? Smart dust, nanobots. I don't know where this technology goes, but they want to control it. I mean, if you're talking about plant life and animal life, I mean, we already have the GMOs. Bill Gates has invested into that a gazillion miles. He's buying up all this farmland. I understand he just bought a bunch of seed food banks, where they have the preservation of our natural seed. He's scooping up all of that. He's also invested into climate mitigation with climate engineering. I guess that's to offset for the GMOs. I mean, you name it. If it involves control and the reduction of life on this planet, he's involved.
Yes.
A lot of people know about Bill Gates' dad being on the board of Planned Parenthood, but his grandfather was a founding member on the Eugenics Society. So this is being passed down generation to generation with Bill Gates. And like I said, he's a transhumanist. They want to re-engineer natural organic life on the planet. They want to turn it into something synthetic. So it's not just about, like I said, zero population. This is a war against creation. It's a war against humanity. It's a war against natural life on the planet. And these control freaks, these transhumanists, and it seems like most of the social media heads, at least the original Apple head guy, the PayPal, they're all in the transhumanist bucket.
Yep.
So, and they're controlling all our information, or at least attempting to. So, I don't know. We could talk about some of the other things, as far as Margaret Sanger is concerned. But I mean, these people used to just, you go back a couple of decades, and these people were all hanging out together. Bill Gates' dad, Margaret Sanger, Arm & Hammer, Prescott Bush. They all ran in the same circles.
Yep.
So, anyway, I don't think good's coming from it. You could talk about, purification of the races. So what? If we're all into the web and being manipulated, and our bodies are being manipulated by future technology that hasn't been completely released yet, what difference does it make? We're not human beings anymore at that point.
I understand your concern, and I share it. My biggest concern, though, and we just saw it demonstrated down in Texas, they'll get these ideas into their heads, and they'll just rush forward with them without thinking them all the way through and looking for potential pitfalls. And, I'm a little concerned about the idea of human DNA being re-engineered by the same guy who gave us Windows Vista and Millennium Edition.
Well, I guess if the history of Bill Gates is looked into, I guess he's been kind of a front man anyway. I mean, he gets credit for it's a monopoly, right? I make the virus, and then I'll give you the fix for it. So seems like we're that blue plate is being reproduced with COVID.
Yeah.
Well, what he accomplished through what he accomplished through Microsoft.
Yeah, Randy, I got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials.
Okay.
More callers waiting on the line. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We have some of our phone lines are open right now. Area code 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Karen in West Virginia. Hello, Karen. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just wanted to clarify something with you with regard to the Fred Meyer stores. I used to live out in Oregon, and usually these expired food products are sent to soup kitchens and, Salvation Army or other places where they can distribute them. Mm-hmm. These products were left without any refrigeration, and so they were probably full of bacteria and dangerous to eat. But yes, it does give you an idea of where the United States is headed. Yes. Because when people are dumpster diving to get food, that's not a good sign.
No, it's definitely a very, very bad sign.
Yes, it's a very bad sign. And I lived out there. I'm very familiar with Fred Meyer. And they were throwing those foodstuffs away because they were spoiled.
Okay.
I also have kind of a bone to pick with you. I don't call in very often. I listen to your show every day. And you have a troll that is on the show every single day. And this is Mark from Carolina. He is a walking, talking Kudnov Kalergi plan person. This is not a native North Carolinian. He's probably out of New York City. He took up the first 15 minutes of your program, and he's wrong. He's a disinfo informant. Rockefeller, he was saying that Bill Gates is not a Jew. He is a Jew. He is related to the Rockefeller family through the female line. The Rothschild family did not have a male heir, and so they married one of their females off to the Rockefellers, and that is how you ended up with Bill Gates.
Okay.
And if you do your research the way that I have, you will find that this is true. So this gentleman that calls in every single day, I don't call in often. I prefer to listen.
Okay.
I respect RBN. I love you.
Thank you.
I respect what you're doing. But this individual is a disinfo agent, and you need to get rid of him. When you have people call in, there should be a time limit. You call in every 3 or 4 days. No more than that. You don't call in every single day. Why is race mixing only inevitable in white countries? Ask him that.
Okay. I'm sure he's listening.
This guy is the Kudinov-Kalergi plan walking.
Okay.
And I'm so angry because I don't call in until I am totally fed up. He has no love for the native stock that built this country. He talks about the Constitution. Mike, you know they're not paying any attention to the Constitution.
Yes, we know that.
You must know that. I voted for Trump as a last resort.
Same
they
here.
Don't care about the Constitution. So he points, oh, look over there, a squirrel, but don't look over there at all of the Zionists in Biden's administration. This guy, you need to cut loose from him, get rid of him, do your listeners a favor. This guy is a total loser. What kind of a man calls in every single day on a radio show? You don't need him. You have people that listen to you religiously every day like me. Honest,
yes.
God-fearing people. There is a natural order. This order is against Christ. Every single thing on this planet was made by him and for him.
Well, what we need is
if you have nothing more, just get rid of this guy and say, look, I'm going to put some kind of limits on my callers.
Yeah, I've been thinking about getting an hourglass or an egg timer or something here. I had one when I was still on Oahu, but it didn't make the trip here to Indiana. The reason I'm flexible on the amount of time I give callers, it has to do with, first of all, the quality of the call, because I'll let those go longer. And second, if I don't have a lot of calls waiting on the lines, then I tend to let them go on a little bit longer. Otherwise, I risk running out of calls, and which is fine. I go back to doing the news, but I'm trying to be fair and First Amendment here. But what I need is for more varied people to be calling on in to the show.
Well, I will call. I don't monopolize. You know that. This is only the second time that I've called into RBN to your show. I listen every single day, and I'm getting fed up. I like Tom. I like Marcos. I like Peter. There's a lot of other people. Layla. There's people that I like. I have no problem with them. But this guy monopolized the first 15 minutes. And listen, I'm not stupid. Okay, I've lived in Chicago. I've lived in other places other than West Virginia. This guy, it's okay. You know, you got it. I've heard this rap, and I'm tired of this guy. Get him off, boot him off for a while, say, take a rest, buddy. Go find something else to do.
Okay, I'll
I have nothing against you, Mike. I mean, really, I love your show. I wouldn't listen every day if I didn't. But I know that I'm reverberating what other people are thinking.
You probably are. I mean, I got a lot of emails about Tom in Florida. And certain other callers who do call in every day.
Black people are black. Just like Muhammad Ali said, the redbirds fly with the redbirds, the bluebirds fly with the bluebirds. I have no problem with that. Okay? Every race is beautiful on its own.
Yes.
Jews, race, mix. That's their thing. They're mixed themselves. They want everybody to mix. And this guy, Mark, he's a troll. He is bad news. He's a disinfo guy. So I'm just warning you. I do my homework.
All right. I'll keep an eye on him, and if he starts to get out of line, I'll rein him in the way I did some of the other callers. But what we need is for more varied people to call in.
I don't complain. I don't go over and above what I should say. I'm not. I'm a very loving person. I'm tired of it. Sick of it.
Okay. Well, you've pretty much made your point here, And, thank you for the kind words about the show, and thank you for your concerns about some of the callers. And we're going to let you go here and switch over to Dan in Washington State. Hello, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for taking the call. I agree with the last caller 100%. I appreciate her passion. I think Mark is definitely a Jewish troll. It's clear. He called me a Nazi, and he asked, how do I feel about that? And I realized a long time ago, if you stick up for white people at all, you will be called racist KKK. And
Absolutely,
if you tell the truth
absolutely.
about Jewish power, and if you tell the truth about Jewish power, say controlling the banks, controlling the media, then you're called Nazi. So,
or anti-Semites, or Jew haters, or
exactly. So, and that word was invented by Jewish supremacists, really, after they massacred the German people. Massive war crimes. If you've ever seen that movie Hellstorm or read the book, I mean, and it's all because Hitler stood up against communism and the Jewish bankers, and that's kind of what you're saying. All wars are bankers' wars. That's exactly what Hitler was saying.
Yes.
But wasn't perfect. But if you go back to World War II, like what happened, and he also said Hitler wanted to exterminate the Slavs. That's just nonsense. They were getting massacred by the communists, and then when Hitler came in, they all welcomed him, and then they got massacred again. But they got it from both sides. He wasn't perfect. I'm not saying Hitler was perfect.
No, he definitely made a few mistakes along the way there.
Right.
One of the things that we are not taught in history is that Hitler was very much in communication with the Jewish community in Germany, and basically said that assuming the Nazis won the war and conquered Africa, that he was willing to give them the entire island of Madagascar as their homeland. And, of course, the Zionists did not want that.
By the Zionists. He was supported by the Zionists.
They minted commemorative coins that had the Star of David on one side and the swastika on the other.
America, like you said, they just lie about everything. We're not told about the war crimes Eisenhower did to the Germans.
No, we're not.
We're not told, and then we turn around and send a bunch of young guys to go fight supposed communism. After we just helped them, and then, so it's just that's a good movie too. Is Slaughterhouse 5 kind of talks?
Oh, that's
about
an excellent movie.
Yeah, so it's I like the show. And I don't really hate Mark. I agree with Mark on some issues, but I just feel like he's anti-white. He knows people get triggered, and this diversity, multiculturalism is all targeted towards white countries. So he's don't care if English get multiculturalized or Germans or Italians or whatever, but tell them to go move to China and tell them to start importing millions of Indians, and see what they tell them, So I don't know. Anyway, thanks for taking the call. Have a good day.
All right, well, thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Tom in Utah. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Hey, I just got to let you know, ignorance is bliss. Oh, it's also lethal.
Yes, I was about to make that comment.
And the truth, unfortunately, is very heavy, very painful, but saving. And right now, I think we're in a geological Rahm Emanuel moment. And with this terrible cold front, the immune systems of the human beings that are being, denied protection in Texas and in the whole United States. It's a setup for the second wave. When you have suppressed immune systems because of the exposure and lack of good nutrition, then you have the livestock going through the same thing. You put those two together, you've got a recipe for disaster.
I agree.
The Rahm Emanuels are smiling and say, "Oh, what a goody opportunity for us."
Yes.
People are going to come down sick. They will write it off as COVID, and then go at you with a needle and violate your body. Anyway, the answer really is in Revelation chapter 2. If we want to make it through this mess, we got to respect that chapter. But if you don't, then you end up receiving the fornication of the vile, as it's labeled in the book of Revelation.
Okay.
And, as I look at oversee this whole situation in Texas and even in Portland, I say, what a setup for these guys. Are going to take advantage of the geological challenges to simply satisfy their political gains.
Yeah. Well, never let a good crisis go to waste, as the saying goes here. Anyway, Tom, we're going to let you go here and switch over to Stuart in Maine. Hello, Stuart. Boy, you got to be cold up there.
Yeah, it's been rough. It's been single digits for too long, so I'm still breathing.
Good.
But anyway, let me just say that woman who attacked Mark is absolutely outrageous.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who call every day, including the person I find most insufferable is the person who never stops talking about immigration. Okay.
Yes.
We get it, but every call. Okay. Anyway, Mark comes under a lot of fire because he deals with reality. He deals with things. He talks about things that people don't want to. They don't want to admit to. But let's think about Trump. Because he raises the many failures of Donald Trump, he's accused of being Trump bashing. And why doesn't he attack Biden? Well, we know about Biden. Nobody here supports Biden or the Democratic Party. The issue here is the illusions of Donald Trump, who has betrayed us on many things. Okay? I mean, still it would have been better to have him as president, far better than Biden. The other issue is when he criticizes aspects of capitalism. Capitalism has a lot to be criticized. I could go into a whole thing that one day I'll call in and talk about it. There are many problems. It doesn't mean you're necessarily a socialist. I tend to think he's not a socialist, but he gets accused of that. Okay? And finally, the other point is this thing on eugenics. Eugenics doesn't necessarily mean killing people. It means, as I think Paul from New Jersey was getting at the other day, is you want to improve the racial stock. If you have people who have genetic defects or mongoloid or whatever, do you really want them to reproduce? I don't think so. Where I think Mark makes his mistake is he thinks everybody's the same. He doesn't recognize what I believe, right or wrong, right or wrongly, that different races produce different cultures. It's not a matter of logic. It's a matter of nature. It's one of what I would say the great mysteries of life. There's no logic to why Chinese culture is the way it is, in my opinion, compared to European culture. Okay? And I think when you don't recognize that, then you don't see any difference in races. Okay? Having a small percentage of races of other people in your country, it could be okay, but a few percent. But when you start bringing in large numbers, then your own culture is at risk because human nature being what it is.
Absolutely correct.
Birds of a feather flock together. And let's recognize nature. Everything isn't logical. Okay, different people have different souls, more or less, what I would say.
All right, well, Stuart, I hate to do this. We're running out of time here. I'm going to have to let you go. We've got one more commercial break. We'll be back with the last segment of our program today. I'm going to try and squeeze in all the phone calls, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today. We're going to try and cram these last three phone calls through, starting with Miles in Maine. Hi, Miles. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I'd just like to say I think that was an excellent call by Karen. I'd like to hear more from Karen. I wish she would call more because she's a very good caller. and has the potential to add to the show. Also, to me, it sounds like Stewart and his friend in North Carolina are from the same tribe. They both, I don't know about Stewart, but it's clear Mark has, extolled socialism. He's always got some socialist leader he thinks is good, and socialism's good, repeatedly, over and over. So, I mean, there's no escaping that. And, Mark will, sometimes he'll go round and round, and sometimes he'll end up agreeing with you in type of a tongue-in-cheek way, but he'll end up agreeing with you. But he does repeat what he says over and over, just as Karen mentioned. But, talking about eugenics anyway, Michael, eugenics is eugenics, whether you breed it out or eliminate it in some other method. When you get rid of one race, if everyone black or everybody white or everybody of one group mated with somebody else, then there'd be no more, Indians or Chinese, or, if everybody mixed with something else, we'd just be one big manila envelope, right?
Yes, very much so. And that's what the globalists would like to see happen.
Exactly. So, there's merit to that. I mean, people, I think, and I know there's exceptions and when people love each other and stuff like that, but in general, if we went around doing that, we would eliminate races just through doing that. And I would just kind of caution toward that. And I think everybody has their own unique, characteristics and traditions and values and cultures and what have you to offer. But yeah, I mean, I'm for everybody having their own culture, not just melting us into one thing and saying, "Oh, well, you're just the human race,"
I would agree with you on that. All right, well, fine, Miles. We're going to go to Scott in Nevada. Yeah, thanks a lot. Scott in Nevada, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
I'll make it quick. From the first hour, the subject of these COVID-19 vaccines came up. I read a report this morning from the Pentagon that about 30% of GIs are declining the vaccine.
Yes,
and
I can see that.
They are allowed to do it without. You caught that?
Yeah, I caught that.
The reason they're allowed to do. Okay, the reason is they can do that is because it's classified as experimental and they cannot be forced to take it.
Well, that should apply to us U.S. citizens as well.
Or one would think, wouldn't one? Title 45, Part 46, you can decline any experimental medicine. That's in the U.S. codes. And for the Constitution, that came up in the second hour. The American Revolution, as far as I can see, is the single most important political event in mankind's history. I can get to that on another call sometime. Good hearing you, Michael. Talk to you later.
All right, thanks an awful lot. I mean, there's, no doubt that the American Revolution inspired the French Revolution and several others that followed. Okay, I'm starting to hear the music here. My apologies to the callers still waiting online. Call back tomorrow, and we'll get you on the air here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he is going to share wonderful things with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. They're going to have a huge electric bill this month. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.